Welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, reality our realm, set as we see it, and frankly as well. I'm Joe Spina, along with co-host Paul Crowley. Nice to have you back, Paul.
It's good to be back, Joe. I tell you, going down to D.C. in the middle of December, I was hoping it would be a little warmer than it was around here, but not to be. It was pretty cold when I walked from the state capitol, where I had my picture taken with Elizabeth Warren, if you can believe it, from the state capitol to Sweet Georgia Brown's, which is the place.
But the camera didn't blow up, huh?
It didn't. Well, I haven't gotten the picture yet, so I don't know. She may not want to be sharing it because when she realizes.
Did she say how?
She didn't get into how. Maybe a little bit of the why, but not the how.
Didn't get into that, huh? Frankly Joe. Well, before we get to Frankly Joe, Paul, you know, I want to wish all of you folks out there from the Jewish faith a happy Hanukkah. If we can put that up there, Joe, Paul, and Pedro, Dave, and all of us at LCTV, and Frankly Speaking, may you have a happy Hanukkah season. To Frankly Joe. Pensions, liabilities, declining revenue, digital media, and growing competition drove the Boston Herald to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, voluntary Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Things are changing in the newspaper business, and the question becomes, is print news a thing of the past, a dinosaur on its way to extinction? And if so, what will replace it? Which brings me to wonder the fate of the Lynn item. Will declining revenue, digital media, and growing competition drive the Lynn item to a similar fate? And if so, what would replace it? Paul, what do you think? I mean, I've heard that they're having some financial problems over there, which pretty much surprised me. In fact, I went to a dear friend of mine passed, and I was at a wake, and I ran into Wayne Losey, who's, you know, did a nice job, by the way. Congratulations, Wayne, on, you know, ran a tough race. Yeah. And he was with his daughter, Beth, present hand, and I had never met her before. Lovely, lovely lady. And she came from the lottery to the Lynn item, in which great things were expected. And from my understanding is she's on her way to D.C., where you just came back, to take over their lottery, and she's no longer with the item. Why is that the case?
Well, I really want to defer to her on why she's no longer there, but I will say that I think that the D.C. lottery is going to benefit greatly by her being there.
She's a very talented woman.
And if there's any truth to the fact that the item is in some type of financial difficulty, and I've seen a lot of signs around town that support that.
Yeah,
but by the way, not the least of which is the principal of the item routinely going to City Hall trying to get checks in advance because he can't make payroll and things like that. That's a pretty serious thing.
Well, it was interesting because of a friend of mine who reads all of the employees and who's there not. He's the one that brought up, you know, let me know that Bresnahan was no longer with them because he noticed they weren't featuring her on there.
Right.
And he also had mentioned that he's noticed a downsizing, so to speak. So that's why I asked you.
What's really interesting is, so it was since before Thanksgiving, because I talked to the wake that you were at was a couple of days before I saw Beth at a fundraiser here in Lynn at Zimmons, maybe November 20th. So it was the week before Thanksgiving. It was a Saturday night. I talked with her at length about it, and she had said that she had quit the day before. The item hasn't said anything about it.
Well,
and that's interesting. You know,
it is.
You know, if it was something that they wanted to share, you know they would. They want to share my salary and, you know, all the dirt that they can find on me, but they don't want to share something very near and dear to them.
I want to get to, you were not here, and while you were down in D.C., you didn't have a chance to rebut. There was a feature, headline banner, top prominent, about an individual. It actually was a slap more at you than it was at Gliss, because in effect, what they were saying is this individual had scheduled a pickup to go to the physician, and instead of going to Humphrey Street or Paradise, whichever one, ended up at the wrong place, and things happen. And all of a sudden, this became a big, big news story. And apparently, the item claimed that you have a dispatcher or someone who runs the dispatching service, that individual, you know, a lieutenant or
Director of Transportation.
the director of transportation said, and the item suggested that he said, almost quoted him as saying, "Oh, we don't do dispatching. That's done by, you know, an outside agency, and so we're not culpable." Apparently, they had to clean that up.
Well, so let me just clarify two things. First of all, the first story, which was about the unfortunate incident that involved one of our consumers, that we made a mistake in scheduling the trip. We put 990 Humphrey Street when it should have been 990 Paradise Road, brought them to the wrong address. We weren't able to resolve it. Part of it is contractual, but part of it is, you know, maybe something that we could have done that we didn't do. So we clearly had some issues with what happened and how we handled it. We learned from it, and going forward, we hope things like that won't happen
Paul,
again. Let me just finish one piece that's important, and that is that for that particular instance, we were the dispatcher. It was on the Gliss Transportation side. We handle everything from the scheduling to the dispatching to the drop-off and pickup. Where the item got it wrong is they tried to conflate the issue with this particular person with a story that they were also trying to put together about that Pam Edwards from Mass Senior Action was talking about complaints about a consolidation that went on at the MBTA. We don't handle dispatch with the MBTA anymore. That has changed. And so they were talking 1 minute about this poor, unfortunate soul who got kind of a bum deal for the ride we gave them, and then he was talking about what was going on with the MBTA, and then they conflated the two, and it doesn't make any sense.
I got that, and the point, let me unravel for you folks if I can. Let's get some facts. First of all, you give about 600,000 to 700,000 rides a year, correct? Right. So this is one instance out of 600,000, 700,000.
Right.
Pretty good track record, Paul.
Well, we've had other complaints too.
I understand that, but the point of the matter is, when you do 600 to 700,000 rides a year, you're going to have some problems. There's no way about it.
Yes, stuff happens.
Number two, nobody tried to pass the buck and blame it on some third party.
Nobody.
Okay, so that's that part, which, by the way, was cleared up to some level in an article that was printed a couple of days after the original.
Right, and that was really just an article to make it, what the article claimed that we were now coming clean and accepting responsibility,
yes, exactly.
Which was not the case. We had never tried to get away from it in the first place.
All right, let me get the other one. Then, out of nowhere, it switches to Paradise Lost. I thought I was reading a John Milton novel about the war between the angels and God, the good ones and the bad ones. So apparently you were the bad angel in this one, because it turns around allegedly that this individual contacted you. You said, put it in writing. He said he did, and you never got back to him. And that was to somehow say that you weren't receptive. So right. I'd like it, that's the part I'd like to be cleaned up. The other stuff, people out there understand mistakes and errors.
Right.
They also appreciate owning up to it. They don't like insensitivity.
Right.
And that was the part that bothered me. So I want you to tell them out there exactly what took place.
Okay. So first of all, because I am very open and receptive to people in the senior center, which is in the same building as Gliss, I routinely get to talk to folks in the senior center. I know a lot of them. I know a lot of them full names. I know a lot of them just by their first name. I interact with them. Sometimes I eat lunch with them. I'm down there regularly, so they know me. If they've got an issue, they can come to me. This fella knows me. He knows he can come to me. He came to me. He was pretty upset. He was upset.
You're talking about the rider?
The rider. He was upset.
So he came to you personally,
right,
face to face?
He was upset, and it was very obvious that he was upset. I was actually on my way to a meeting, and I said, look, in order for me to best handle this, I need to have it in writing so that we can find out what went wrong and we can figure out how to deal with it.
That makes sense.
So if you can get me something in writing, I will address it.
Okay.
So that
he agreed.
He agreed. He sent me something in writing.
Okay.
We researched it. We responded, and in that response there was an apology from me, a personal apology for what happened, because it appeared that to him, because we could have done things differently. Now, the timing between when I got the letter from him and when he received the letter from me may have overlapped the items interview of this fella, so it didn't appear like I had responded by then. But I absolutely did.
But they presented him as being antagonistic toward you, disappointed in you. That's the tone.
Yep.
So when people talk about fake news...
He was disappointed in me.
For?
Because I didn't solve the problem right then and there, because he was very mad.
So his problem with you was it wasn't done immediately.
Right.
But in the mechanics of any organization, such as GLIS, things go through channels. It's always somewhat...
And to be perfectly clear about this, because of my willingness to engage with the consumers, the people that we deal with on a regular basis down in the senior center, I sometimes kind of skip the protocols. They don't have to run it up the flagpole. It can come straight to me. And when they do that, that's when problems tend to ensue. And I will just leave you with this. If it means that I can't communicate with them in the senior center, because when I do, I will be treated unfairly because I tried to resolve the issue, then the only ones that lose in that is the seniors, because the seniors feel that they can come to me when they have an issue, and I look to address them in any way I can, and I always have been, and I always will.
Paul, you were recently given a review, weren't you, by the board? Or you were before the board recently? Your board, over GLIS?
Yeah.
And obviously, if they had any issue with you, it would have come out.
Yeah, they wanted to know what was going on with this particular thing.
They were
kind of surprised at the fact that somebody had an incident like this that kind of got escalated, became an above the fold headline story.
Exactly.
At the beginning of the week when everybody's paying attention, you know, clearly, you know, the story was written by a guy who conflated two issues. Got it all wrong, in my view, because it didn't really portray what really happened, A. And B, we have a publisher of that newspaper that, because I don't spend money with this newspaper, looks to get me any chance he can.
Well, with that, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
My friend James Gandolfini and I got to know a lot of combat vets over the years, and it guts me that 22 of you are taking your own lives every day. Wounded Warrior Project is here to help. You don't have to go it alone. You hear me? You don't have to go it alone.
You have the power to make this decision to quit smoking. It took me to get to a mature age where I understood that if I didn't stop, I was gonna put myself in the same position that my mother was in. And I wanted to make a choice while I still had the chance to be here for my daughter.
You can quit. For free help, call 1-800-QUIT now.
And welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm Joe Spina along with Paul Crowley. In this segment, Paul, we're going to talk about a good idea or a bad idea.
Okay.
So, if in fact it is true that the Lynn item has some difficulties and is going to go by way of the Herald, the Boston Herald, which, by the way, I enjoyed as a paper. It was feisty and a fun paper.
And that's not going to stop, is it? I mean, they got
No, it's been sold
up
to
by
Gateway.
Yeah.
But it'll have a different personality.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking of this. Given the news reality, you like that little play on words there, the news reality, would it be a good idea or a bad idea that Lynn would have a bi-weekly paper, which would make a lot of sense, probably on a Wednesday and a Sunday or a Saturday, by which Wednesday would be post-council meetings and they could give a wrap-up of what transpired, and the Sunday one, or the Saturday edition going on to Sunday, would be when they got all the council orders on Friday to let people know what's happening. Plus, do a lot of sports and a lot of visuals. I think that'd be a great, good paradigm, good model.
Yeah, maybe. I would say that you know, as you put it, the news reality is that with the advent of the smartphone and the ability to read stories. I mean, I do more reading on this sucker or on my iPad than I do with print. I mean, I still get the Boston Globe delivered to my home and so forth, and I still get the ink on my fingers and so forth. But every other news outlet that I want to read, I just read online. So the print part is gone.
That's why, yeah.
So, and what's really interesting is you get these news flashes. So you get instantaneous news. Like, for example, my phone buzzed last night at around 12:15. And I said, what's it buzzing at 12:15 for? And it was right after the Patriots game. And what was it? It was to tell me that the Patriots lost.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, the point is that we're getting, the news is just so quick to come to you that you can actually distribute the news through media, maybe through the same kind of vehicle that we have right here. And the print media would be more of an aggregation of like the accumulation of news over time. So your idea does make sense.
That's the whole point. The point is that if local news needs to be local, Paul. You can't find it in the Herald, or the Globe, or the New York Times. So the folks in the city of Lynn want to know what is happening to their tax rate. So we'll get into that. Right. What's proposed, you know, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, we had Council President Dave Sear on last week, and thank you, Dave, for showing up. Darren, I meant. Sorry about that. Darren Sear last week, and he updated, you know, what he thought might be happening. And without that, in fact, I think he's hoping, and we're hoping here at Lynn TV, to create a vehicle by which Darren Sear and the Lynn City Council can get information out.
Right, mayor too, probably, right?
And the mayor also.
Right.
So, you know, this is one of the vehicles that can fill the vacuum should the fate of the item be terminal.
Well, can I just, you know, and I have to say this because, you know, some frustration that I've had with the item over the years, and that is that they're selective about what they report, and they, you know, to some extent, and I have been, I guess, victimized by this. There is a, you know, a propensity to use that as a cudgel as opposed to a news source, you know.
Yes.
Remember once being told that I should not get into a fight with somebody who buys ink by the barrel, and that certainly has been ringing true. But I guess my point is, it's not just enough to decide how to do the local news going forward, but what the local news really should be, because what we are getting from the Lynn item is not really enough about the local news. There's a lot of things being left out.
Yeah.
You know, I think personally.
But Paul, the folks out there already know that. And that, because if they didn't know that, it would be a vibrant paper, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Well, it isn't. So perhaps it ought to do some introspection.
Right.
Now, I understand that there's a lot of folks that would like Ms. Bresnahan, that would have loved the item to be forceful and dynamic, were hampered from doing that because they have a management problem. You know, and my ancestral antiquity, right? They always said the fish rots from the head down.
Yes.
So when you want to look at organizations to find out why they're not faring well, you look to the top, my friend.
Right. No,
that's it. We got to get to Frankly Paul, because I think that's an important piece, and I wish I would get a little credit for this wonderful, wonderful logo arrangement that I made. Pedro, if we can get Frankly Paul up there. Okay, you see that one, Paul?
So you got my 40 years on there. It's 41 now, but that's okay.
Well, that's okay. Go ahead.
All right, so incoming Mayor-elect Tom McGee makes the point that an inadequate transportation infrastructure leads to a languishing economy, and he's referring to Lynn, of course. That's the case in point. As a gateway city, Lynn faces some daunting social and economic issues, largely attributable to a lack of transportation options, so says Mayor-elect McGee. He speaks of the need for Lynn to realize, quote, infrastructure connectivity, that is, access to the arteries of commerce. Considering that Lynn is only 9 miles from downtown Boston and is the only regional gateway city without a rapid transit option, then what McGee is saying makes perfect sense. The trick is to make it happen. As a state senator, McGee knows the ways of the legislature, an asset that could pay great dividends for the city of Lynn, especially with regard to infrastructure connectivity.
I love that phrase, infrastructure connectivity. I think he's right on target with that,
Well,
Paul.
To understand the lack of infrastructure connectivity, all you have to do is try to get out of Lynn from, like, say, from Lynn Shore Drive, try to get up to Wyoming Square at 2:30 during school's in session.
That's exactly what he's talking about.
Right. We're kind of landlocked or stuck in a corner. We can't get out. There's no real major thoroughfares to get out. I will tell you that Jamie Marsh has said in the past that this may be a lofty kind of thing on the order of bringing the blue line to Lynn because of the cost of something. But he talked about the idea of creating a road that would come from Route 1. Remember when Route 1 was going to go straight, or 95 was going to go right through Lynn? And they have that road, it's like a dead end.
James Smith killed that.
Okay, well, that's fine, but then there was the Marsh Road, and they had that road there.
Yeah.
But the exit ramp is right there, and it just stops, and they've got Jersey pylons separating it.
Should it be reintroduced?
Well, no, but what Jamie was talking about is continue that on, and instead of going down the marsh, to go along the river and have it kind of go like this, and then come down in and merge in with the Lynnway.
Well,
wouldn't that be something? That would be able to get you out of from the Lynnway to Route 1 uninterrupted.
Okay, so why aren't we talking about that? Why not? Why isn't the city council talking about it? I think Tom McGee wants to introduce that type of discussion. That's my point.
Right.
So that's only one aspect of it.
The other thing is the ferry, and some good news on the ferry. As a member of the Seaport Economic Council, we had a meeting yesterday, and there is a they just completed a study, and they're basically looking at 30 points of call along the eastern seaboard for either new development or expanded development of waterways as a means of transportation up and down the seaboard.
If they make it cost effective, Paul.
Right.
Right now it's not cost effective.
But what they're doing is recognizing that it needs to be cost effective. You need to understand the demand. You need to understand supply.
Those are studies.
And you need to have it as a complement to an existing infrastructure.
Thank you. That's subsidiary.
Right.
That's secondary.
Right.
So it's comprehensive. Let's look at the comprehensive.
Right.
I buy your concept of connecting to the Lynnway. Makes sense. That can be done.
Right.
And that can be done quickly.
I don't know. It's
quickly.
you got coastal zone.
It's already
management.
there. It can be done quickly, and if with the will. But nobody's talking about it. The blue line's been talked about since I was a toddler. Okay, and nothing has ever happened.
Right.
So, Mayor-elect McGee, I'm going to give you all the support I can, which is not very much, to go forward with your concept, because if he can bring the blue line into Lynn, somehow, some way, and there's a way to do anything if you have the will.
Right.
If you have the will, there's a way to do it. That would solve such problems and would be such an energy boost, an economic boost to Lynn.
Right.
It'd be unbelievable.
The things that it would do for just the Route 1A traffic, Bell Circle and 1A down by the gasoline alley there, and all, only 2 lanes of traffic, and every day from like 6:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock in the morning, it is a veritable. I mean, my drivers trying to get in and out of Boston have all kinds of trouble with that.
Well, let me give you the best one. I get a call from my daughter who lives in Jamaica Plain, and she has a Pilates studio in Cambridge. She's a pretty sharp gal. She owns restaurants. She's adaptable. When the restaurant business, after you squeeze as much as you can, you do something else. So now she's in the Pilates business. And she's one step ahead of everything, let me tell you. She went to Jamaica Plain before Jamaica Plain became the place to go. And she said to me, Daddy, I want to buy some stuff in Lynn. I said, what are you talking about? She says, Lynn is the place to go. She's saying that Boston is priced out and that Lynn has all the attributes, all the amenities necessary, and if you could get people that could easily live in Lynn and commute to downtown Boston quickly, which they can't do right now, as you pointed out, with a blue line and rapid transit, they could do that.
Right.
Lynn would boom. You would have more millennials and you'd have more professionals moving into Lynn because of the housing stock and the price and everything else. They've been priced out. Somerville is the pits. And you know what happened to Somerville? Somerville became a prominent,
Right.
suave place to go. Lynn, you have to think out of the box. I'm hoping that Tom McGee, with his concept of infrastructure connectivity, the people get behind it.
Right.
I'm glad to hear you're the first person that I've heard talk about making that connection to the Linway.
Right.
Have you heard anybody talk about that?
Well, Jamie was the one that came up with the idea, I think.
Well, it's fine that he came up with the idea. At least you get credit.
But that was back when I was
nobody-
when I was on the city council. He was talking about that.
Well, it's news to me.
Right.
It's news to the folks out there.
Right.
The item never certainly printed anything about it.
Right.
So let's get behind something like that. We have a new administration coming in. We should get behind it to push for the betterment of the city of Lynn. We have a lot of problems, Paul. The state is tattooing the city on its educational budget, trying to claim that they're not going to give us $5 million or we shorted them $5 million. That's pretty hard for us to make up. We're going to get a whole barrel of kids coming in under the, migration, the open borders folks, they're coming into Lynn like gangbusters, right?
Yeah, we get more than our fair share of everybody that comes in this
Of
country.
course.
Yeah.
And so we've got all kinds of problems that are going to be faced come 2018. In fact, folks, I'm going to get to this right now. We're going to do hum because this is an interesting aspect. Actually, we're going to do hum when we come back from break. We've got about 3 minutes to break, Paul. So go further with this concept of, and I really like it. So from the Marsh Road, 1 minute. All right. This Marsh Road thing, folks, think about this. We're going to make a connection from the Marsh.
Not from the Marsh Road.
From where?
From the off ramp on Route 1 that
Where?
was going to go to
Revere?
the Marsh Road. Yeah, right where it's just beyond Northgate. You're looking. It's right as Route 1 goes off to the left. They were going to run 95, and they had like an off ramp, and it just dies. They got Jersey barriers.
But isn't it
All I'm
by
saying
the Marsh Road? Isn't it on the...
It leads to the Marsh Road. If
Right.
it were to continue straight on, it would be the Marsh Road. But what I'm saying is, instead of running it down the Marsh Road, you run it like this along the water's edge on the Pines River,
And
then you bend it into
the
the Linway, so that if you're coming up the Linway, you can either go across the General Edwards Bridge to get into Revere, or you can take this road. It'll take you right to Route 1.
We'll get back to it right after this break. Stay tuned, folks.
Sometimes a smile can say more than words could ever express. But what if you couldn't smile? Unfortunately, that's the sad reality for so many children today. But it doesn't have to be this way. Since 1999, Smile Train has been helping children say more than words ever could with their beautiful new smile. To learn more, call or go online now.
I love my sister.
My heart doesn't see race. Love is love.
Infrastructure connectivity. That is what Mayor-elect Tom McGee is talking about. Paul, you mentioned about swinging a road over. They did the same thing over in Beverly, Salem, if you remember, a few years back.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it worked, fabulous.
You're talking about that road that runs from the Beverly Bridge, runs all the way down to like Main Street and Peabody, right?
Yeah. When I was doing radio at WESM here.
ESX?
Yeah. I can't remember the radio shows anymore. I'm getting senile, I guess. But that was a big issue. We used to talk about that all the time, and there was a lot of people opposed to it. But it turned out to be a really good project.
Right.
It redirected things, that's true. But all of the folks that were the merchants still do pretty well.
Right.
And
The key is that that's the kind of road that it's not where you're getting on and getting off, getting on and getting off. It's just like a straight through. It's the expressway.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So that's one answer. We'll add more to that as we get along. Hum, 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 hum. Now get this, folks. This is a classic. Your property tax rate is going to go down probably, but meantime, your property market value is going to go up. Net result, you pay more in property tax. It gets better. The average Lynn family will realize over a $400 drop in their federal tax bill should Congress pass the proposed bill before them now. Which, by the way, Moulton's opposed to, and so is Elizabeth Warren, your buddy. Anyway, even though you're going to get that $400 drop should it pass, the average Lynn homeowner will lose that gain in higher property taxes come April 1st. Shortly after market values on your property is predicted to fall, thus higher taxes on a piece of property whose value has decreased. Paul, you've talked about this before. Soon there will be no property class. Then the socialists and the left will be ecstatic.
Okay, so that's a kind of a leap. I'm trying to understand where you're going with that, but let me just speak to this market value of property is predicted to fall. Who's predicting that the values are going to fall?
The economic indicators have been reading articles on it.
So you know,
We're at the saturation.
we're about to start to see a decline. You know, it's that 7-year cycle in real estate.
We've reached the saturation point.
Okay, and you know, isn't it interesting when you see something like you know, two tax law changes converging to take away the impact. So what's really happening is the federal government is pushing the burden onto the locals, right?
Well, the federal government's turning around and giving you a cash benefit,
right? Thankfully,
which the local government's turning around and gobbling up before you can enjoy it.
Now, with respect to people who live on fixed income,
they
are not going to see they probably won't see the benefit, the tax benefit, but they will see the tax increase. So local property taxes continue to be regressive in that they disproportionately hurt those on fixed income, the seniors in our community.
So what you're saying is if a person's on a fixed income not earning, therefore they're not, why am I taxed on my pension? I'm taxed on my pension, Paul. So people on fixed incomes are taxed.
Right.
They're taxed on their pension. Now they're not going to be taxed on their pension, so they are beneficiaries.
So you're expecting to benefit to the tune of $400 based on what you understand about the federal tax law?
It was on the front page of your favorite newspaper, you know? I mean, you know, they even admitted to it. Yes, it's projected that the average family in the city of Lynn that earns about $47K a year will receive better than $400 on a lower tax. Now we're talking about people who pay taxes.
But a single senior citizen on a fixed income is not, you know, it's not a family.
I realize that. But is you going to pay less of a tax burden?
And I don't know the answer to that. I guess if that's the truth,
if you're being taxed.
Well, let me put it to you this way: what if somebody is currently paying zero taxes?
Well, that person gets nothing. Why should they?
But owns a home.
Yeah.
That person will see an increase of $400 in their real estate tax bill, while not receiving any benefit at the federal income tax level.
Paul, that person is receiving food stamps and all types of services from the government to offset. Okay? Do you ever think of that? Do you ever think of that? If that person is paying 0% in federal income tax, which is 47% of Americans, correct?
Yeah.
And owns a house,
does
that person qualify for food stamps and government assistance from the state, federal, and wherever? Well, of course they do.
Right.
So give me a break. What I'm saying to you is, and this is the important thing, we're in the business of trying to preserve families, to grow families.
Right.
And this is directed toward the middle class. My little play on words at the end is simply this. If you keep taxing, and you start inflating everything else, what you're saying is correct. Sooner or later, nobody's going to have any property because they can't afford it.
Right.
That's going to make the socialists and the lefts ecstatic because they don't believe in private property, Paul.
Right.
And the government is attacking that institution that should not be attacked, should be sacrosanct, and that is ownership, private property ownership. That's what I'm talking about. It's a philosophical point.
Well, so back to the property tax question, the city of Lynn, just because of things like inflation and wage growth,
and bad management, Paul. Throw in bad management.
Okay. Invariably has to increase revenue by about 3 or 4% every year, would you say?
We can argue over the word invariably.
Right.
So
routinely, regularly.
Yeah.
So how about every year? They have to, so and if that's the case, so property taxes are going to continue to go up no matter what. There is no way for them to go down, even when real estate values go down, as we've pointed out in the past. So my point is that at the local level, you know, there is no end in sight for property tax increases, and, you know.
Well, there is a property tax increase. It's already built in. It's happening this year, Paul.
Right.
They reevaluate their homes. Right. They send people out there.
And don't expect it to end anytime soon. That's my
I
point. It's
understand
going to
that,
continue to go
because
up.
that's the only way they can extract money from the folks, and they're doing it on the predicate that we need new schools.
Right.
They're going to do it with the police and fire. They're going to give you every sob story they can think of to raise taxes. And you know the beneficiaries are the folks that don't pay any taxes.
Right. Well, you know, and the other side.
And what happens to the middle class, Paul?
And the other side of this, and this is something that the elected officials that are in office today and for over the past, let's say, 50 years, probably aren't willing to admit. But the fact of the matter is, we have been, you know, spending our money poorly forever. And if we could go back and do it over, we would do it very differently. In fact, I think we could have all brand new schools, and we would be paying less taxes if we had done it in a smart way, you know, kind of thinking from a business perspective, as opposed to making sure that, you know, you create plum jobs for your friends and have places for you to land when you get out, when you stop being a state rep, you land up in the water and sewer, you know. Those kinds of things are
Paul, you just mentioned something about infrastructure connectivity that happened many, many years ago when Representative Jim Smith put the squash on making that connector road. See what the consequences are of that act? Okay?
Right.
That's short-sightedness. Now, the history of being far-sighted in the city of Lynn is not that good.
right.
And nor is it in the federal government. They're short-term. Can I get reelected? How do I get over the
Right.
bridge? They're not interested. That's why they can't stand Trump. Trump is talking long-term.
Right. You want to hear something funny? Because I used to always think long-term, and my energy level when I first became a city council, let's just say it was here, because I was, you know, and I think people would agree with this, that I put my heart and soul into it. I worked very hard to try to make changes and do all that kind of stuff. So my energy level was here. And some of the people that were, you know, on the council with me, their energy level wasn't as high. But it was high, but not as high. Now when you come to the election, all of a sudden, their energy level goes like this, and mine stays the same, because I'm still continuing to do it. So now it looks like that they're more engaged than me, because during an election cycle, people are paying attention to who's working the hardest, right? So it actually looks like I'm not working hard enough when I'm working hard the whole time.
Of course, but the predicate on which people get elected, we've got some really fascinating quotes coming up shortly. If I could get an idea of when we're taking a break, because that monitor is telling me we've got a minute to break, and is that accurate or not? Okay. So that being the case, can we put up Witty Gal, Pedro, the Witty Gal? Now, the Witty Gal is kind of a nice historical figure, otherwise known as Margaret Thatcher. And I want to read a couple of her quotes to you folks out there, and Paul, you can comment on it. Did you know that one of the great problems of our age is that we are governed by people who care more about feelings than they do about thoughts and ideas? How does that ring? And then she said, and this is the key one, the problem with socialism is that you eventually run out of other people's money. Now, she said this many years ago, folks, and I'm sure that Paul would agree with that. To wear your heart on your sleeve isn't a very good plan. You should wear it inside where it functions best. These are very simple thoughts, but they're profound. Being democratic is not enough. A majority cannot turn what is wrong into right. In order to be considered truly free, countries must also have a deep love of liberty and an abiding respect for the rule of law. Europe was created by history. America was created by philosophy. I like that last one. Europe was created by history and America by philosophy. So we can't really identify with Europe, right? See, a European, an Iberian, says, I'm an Iberian.
Right.
I'm not Muslim. I'm Christian. I'm Iberian. Or from Austria, or from Czech, or Ruthians, Lithuanians, whatever. They have history. The United States is a philosophy. It's an idea.
Right.
Life, living in pursuit of happiness.
An experiment, even.
It's an experiment.
Right.
Based on Rome.
Very successful one.
Rome was similar. Rome has a similar because Rome was a republic like the United States. So they're having a lot of problems over there. And in fact, I just read an article where Sweden is going to be, or the Swedes are going to be a minority in their own country shortly.
Is that right?
Yeah, minority in their own country shortly. So that's the benefit of George Soros, open borders, Barack Obama, the United Nations, by the way, wants open borders. They say there should be a one-world society and anybody can go anywhere they want to go.
Right.
The whole world's a sanctuary, so to speak. Well, Donald Trump says, no, I don't want that. I don't like that idea.
And I think that as a society, that's the majority viewpoint in this country, wouldn't you?
That want open borders or don't?
That don't.
Then why do we elect people that do?
Well, that's the that whole notion of the organized minority, right?
That's true, but why is it that the media is intent upon that same concept? Why? I mean, George Soros is pumping more money surreptitiously into more candidates for the sole purpose of this open border concept, and he's got the Pope on his side.
Right.
Isn't that a classic?
Yeah.
You get the antithesis of Christianity, and the Pope, the leader of Christianity.
They say, I mean, I haven't really followed him too much because I shake my head every time I hear him speak. But you know, is he like a liberation theologist?
Who?
The Pope.
Sounds that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he's really got a
him and Jeremiah.
Right. You know, he's into the notion that anybody who has a grievance is a victim and we need to be treated as one. And you know, I don't buy that.
You know, if God wanted us to be all one, why did He create differences? Explain that to me, Paul.
Right. If we can't all be the same, right?
Well, He specifically made
hey, you know what?
different types of people.
I am so mad that I can't play basketball in the NBA, you know?
You know why, Paul? You're not good enough.
You're exactly right.
But nobody wants to admit to this thing. So do you enjoy playing basketball?
I do. So I play
So
with
does it matter?
I play with people of my own skill set, that's all.
Would you kneel or stand during the national anthem?
I would stand.
A lot of them don't. Make millions of dollars. They should be on their hands and knees kissing the ground and be thankful. So, we're going to go to break, and when we get back, we're going to do the witty guy. How's that one? Stay tuned.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
49 million Americans struggle to put food on the table. More than 1 in 5 children are at risk of hunger. Among African Americans and Latinos, it's 1 in 3. 40% of food is thrown out in the U.S. every year, or about $165 billion worth. All of this uneaten food could feed 25 million Americans. If you or someone you know is struggling with hunger, please visit My Brother's Table at 98 Willow Street.
And we're back. A witty guy. He was a giant of a man who was only 5'6" tall, Paul.
How many?
5'6".
That's pretty small.
He was a small guy.
Yeah.
Now, people don't realize that, but he smoked cigars like you. Loves cigars. So, the witty guy was none other than Winston Churchill. And here's what he said. He said, the problem with political jokes is they get elected. Food for thought. You can't make the poor rich by making the rich poor. Profound.
Yeah, that's it.
A fanatic, and this is really A fanatic is one who can't change his or her mind and won't change the subject.
Yeah.
An appeaser is one who feeds the crocodile, hoping it will eat him last. And finally, Winston Churchill said, "I like pigs. Dogs look up to us, cats look down at us, pigs treat us as equals."
Yeah.
Now, here's a guy who arguably saved the world from barbarism, right?
Yep.
I mean, he was a force of forces. And thank you very much, I got rid of him right after the war was over.
Right.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, I mean, they say that you know, any leader of any organization, the style and what makes them successful depends on the needs that they have. For example, do you remember the Celtics of the early '80s when they had Larry Bird and company? Casey Jones was the coach, and Casey Jones was the perfect leader for that team because he allowed them to be who they were and to play, because there was a team full of superstars, and he had to treat them a certain way. Versus the NBA team today, where the average age on the Celtics is 23 years old, and you need a guy who is young and enthusiastic and can relate to them in a different way. So the success of Casey Jones in '86 could not have been replicated, I think, today with a very young team that is still kind of...
But he also had the personnel that fit his personality. And
well, right,
yeah.
right.
So you're saying that the circumstance and
Right.
the person, if they mesh,
Right.
you have greatness.
He was a warrior at a time when we needed warriors.
He didn't have the wherewithals, however. He couldn't do anything without the United States. And the United States turned around and cut a deal with the devil incarnate in order to defeat the Germans, otherwise known as the Soviet Union and Stalin, who probably killed more people, arguably, in fact, factually, killed more people than the Germans did.
Right.
Okay? We're talking about Holocaust-wise. I don't know if necessarily Jewish.
They weren't
but
marching into other areas, although they wanted to.
yes, they were. They invaded Poland jointly with Germany, which is the big irony of life. Nobody can explain that to me, and haven't to this date. Both Poland was invaded simultaneously by the Germans.
Who moved first?
Both. They went together. They planned it. They formed the Non-Aggression Act in 1938 with the sole purpose of ending up with a common border. Hitler wanted a common border with Russia in case he decided to get into Russia. Russia wanted a common border with Germany in order to protect against it. So they decided to chop Poland up like a turkey. And nobody declared war on the Soviet Union, who invaded Poland and carved it up just like the Germans did.
But invading Poland, nobody declared war on Germany either.
Yes, they did.
Not as a result of Poland.
Yes, they did.
I thought it was a result of
1939.
I thought
Yes,
it was
they did.
France.
Britain and France did. We didn't, but Britain and France did. So the World War II broke out in 1939.
Right.
People can keep thinking late 41, you know,
Right, when we got
Day
in.
of Infamy.
Right.
Well, in fact, FDR, who wanted to go to war against Germany, couldn't.
So you are the historian, so I understand what you're saying, and I'm in full agreement. The issue that I have still, though, is so if Russia and Germany both kind of had a wink and a nod that they were both going to take half of Poland,
yeah,
and then the French and the British declared war on Germany as a result of that, and they didn't on Russia. You can say, why not?
Soviet Union.
Soviet Union. You say, why not? But the reason why not is because Russia did not next go into France or Belgium. Germany did. So Germany's intentions were clear to the French and the English at the time, don't you think? And
Germany's historical push was never to the west, Paul. What is there to the west? Overcrowded France and the Atlantic Ocean. They had population problems. Their expansion was east. What was to the east?
Russia.
Exactly. So France was always fearful of Germany. Germany became a country after our Civil War. It was never united. It was intentionally divided in order for France, which was a national state early on, and Russia created this alliance to squeeze a vice, to stop expansion of Germany. But Bern's intention was to move eastward and run into Russia. They needed that territory, that land for
But
space.
they still invaded France. France surrendered within
France
24
declared
hours.
war on Germany. France and England declared war on Germany for the invasion of Poland.
Right.
So consequently, what did the Germans have to do thereafter?
Go after France.
And they did, after the fact, and they wiped them out in 2 weeks.
Right.
And they created Vichy France, okay? The only reason why the English were standing is because a body of water prevented the Panzer divisions from going across the Channel.
Right.
All right, that's number one. Number two, which historically is misunderstood, is that Hitler was not, under any circumstances, looking for war in 1939. He didn't have the wherewithals, the machinery, or to be able to handle that. In 1936, when he marched into the Rhineland, he had exactly 1 division. The French had a whole bunch.
Right.
They had 100 and plus 90 in reserve. So, in 36, they had nothing. You think in 3 years they were able to build up a fighting force? No, he was looking downstream.
Right.
We got to get to comments. We'll get to the history lessons later.
Okay.
Any
I'm
case,
sorry,
that's
folks,
okay.
I get really infatuated with this
Well,
stuff.
we can do that later.
Yeah.
Now, we'll start with, frankly speaking, Paul and Joe, I went to the assessor's office at the Lynn City Hall due to the announcement on the City of Lynn website from the assessors to come down before December 4th regarding the new property valuations, which we mistakenly, because we were of the same opinion, we announced it here on this show. When I got there, I was told I could not file a disagreement and there was no time for the assessors to address my concerns. The staff was not helpful and not courteous, and not only to me but also to others that were there. Any advice? Don't go to the item.
Well, that's well, you know, that's it's unfortunate because here you have a case where I mean, just from my perspective, I don't know the facts here, but I would say that the assessor wanted to convey a message to the general public about the circumstances around the valuations and what they could do about it. The item apparently misreported it or didn't get the facts completely right. We probably then, in turn, spewed bad information to our audience, and people were running down to City Hall thinking that they could, you know, they could object to, you know, valuations that were on their property if they were unusually high, which is what we said, right?
Yeah, and the item will be taking this issue up sometime this week, Tuesday of this week. We'll be taking up the issue of how to move the.
Oh yeah, so they have to set the residential tax factor.
And then in February, according to last week when I spoke to SEA, they would have it sometime into February in order to lodge their complaints. Or he suggested that you can get an independent realtor to do a survey and give you notification of what you're.
The key is that you have until, like, I think the first Monday in February to pull an abatement form and file it. And I would imagine that a lot of people are going to have that as their recourse.
We'll keep you updated, folks, and thank you for the comment, by the way. We'll keep you updated as best we understand it. Now, Malcolm says this, Paul. He said, "Hi, Joe, and this is for you. You can read, can't you?
Oh, this is for me to read, okay. I want to say that I enjoyed your show on 12/6 with Darren Sayre." Oh, so you don't like it when I'm on? Is that what you're saying, Malcolm? Mm-hmm. I have many fond memories of dealing with Darren's dad, Dave Sayre, many years ago on Herschel Street. I'd like to comment on a couple of issues addressed in this program. Classroom size. I'm a product of the 50s, and when I went to school, classroom sizes were between 35 and 45.
That's true, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Now, I went to the former Lewis School on Bowler Street and must say that the attitude of the parents was totally different than it is today. Parents supported the teacher back then and cooperated with them for the betterment of the child. Today, if there is a problem with a child, the parent says, "Why are you picking on my kid?"
That's an important
and never
point.
asking, "How can I help correct the problem?" Our family values are totally out of control today, and many parents see the school system as a babysitting service and complain when they don't get what they want. Also, Joe, you are 100% correct when it comes to building a new middle school. Paying for it is one thing. The perpetual staffing of it is another massive taxpayer expense. Again, I hope the new mayor and council will explore other equitable means of funding our local government rather than using the archaic and unfair property tax system.
That's
Wow.
a great
Go ahead,
point.
Malcolm.
Well, let me ask you this. He's correct that they has to find another vehicle for funding schools. You can't do it off the property tax anymore, Paul. As you pointed out, it's going to perpetually keep going up.
Right. No, absolutely right.
Or the city goes bankrupt.
I've been pushing this notion that as a region we need to be educating our kids, not as a city or a town. Lynn has, as you accurately point out, we 20% of our population are kids in the school system, or 18 or 19% or something, when the state average is 10%.
Right.
So we have twice as many. The fact that we have an outsized burden is a problem. It should be shared at a regional level. So maybe we should be talking not about whether Lynn gets a school, or Swampscott, or Saugus, or Linfield, or maybe what we're talking about is, so how many kids are there in the region, and how would we educate all
Other
of those
communities
kids?
do that, Paul. They have regional high schools, as you well know.
Right.
We only have a couple of minutes. I want to get to Tom Fenton. Tom says,
Tim.
Like Paul, sounds like Paul and his job was set up to look bad. Front page news in a city this big, please. Give us real news. The item completely missed Pearl Harbor's anniversary.
Well,
So he picked
thanks
up
for
on
your
it, too.
comments, Tim.
Yeah.
I think if I got 5 people who responded to that story over the 24 hours after the story broke, it was 5 or 6. Every one of them, to a person, basically said, "Why is this on the front page?"
Perhaps because they have a brain, Paul, and independent thinkers.
Right.
I mean, anybody who has any sense of fairness recognized it. I mean, it's so transparently biased.
Yeah, it was a hit job.
Of course, and people know that. Now, we started the show by saying that the item, not the item, but the Herald has filed for bankruptcy.
Right. And has been bought out by Gateway.
Proposed,
kind of at the same
proposed
time.
by it.
Right.
And Gateway's not a bargain either, by the way. The point of the matter is there is forces say once upon a time a whip was a very important thing if you had a horse and buggy. Once the horse and buggy went by the boards, the whip maker had to find a different job.
Right.
Maybe we're at that point with newspapers. They said that Andrew Jackson, great show the other night. By the way, I did a lookalike, Andrew Jackson and Daniel Kale. But anyways, Andrew Jackson used lithographs. That was the medium of his day. Not tweeting. That was how he did it. On lithographs, medium of the day. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Have a great week.